This video is brought to you by Squarespace. From custom domains to beautiful websites using their easily customizable templates that you can have up and running in minutes, e-commerce, email and email marketing, SEO, analytics, and scheduling, Squarespace does it all and has done it for us for the last 10 years. If you are a small to mid-sized business in any industry, Squarespace is the place to go for all of your website needs. Hop over to www.squarespace.com/Hugh for a free trial. And if you like what you see and want to move forward, receive 10% off your first order by using the discount code Hugh at checkout. Thanks, Squarespace. Hey everybody, I'm Hugh Brownstone for Three Blind Men and an Elephant, and I will just cut to the chase. If you are a Sony A7 series shooter, version 1, 2, 3, or 4, or an A7S series shooter, most especially an A7S3 shooter, who doesn't need the 9.44 million .EVF or RAW recording, but does want a better photography-weighted hybrid, and would like better autofocus, IBIS, rolling shutter performance, and a couple of mundane but surprisingly useful updates for photography and video, the A75 is at least a sufficient, quite possibly a compelling upgrade. I think it reasonable to view it as one more camera within a broadening camera lineup optimized to keep Sony shooters in the fold at an appropriate return to the company in an era when the pace of innovation has slowed. I think it equally reasonable to believe it will succeed in that mission, from enthusiast photographers wanting to add video to their toolkit to even highest-end YouTubers or event shooters. There's just about nothing it can't do at a practical level. Just as is the case, by the way, with its closest competitors, the Canon R6 III, the Nikon Z6 III, and Panasonic's Lumix S1 II. I don't suppose Sony, Canon, or Nikon will garner significant conquest sales on the basis of the cameras themselves, but Panasonic's S1 and S1R Mark IIs, they just might. Lumix has absolutely joined the big league, leads the way in sophisticated video-forward hybrids, which are now also exceptional stills cameras, has what I think are the best ergos with the easiest to understand menu system for someone switching brands, and the L-mount Alliance lens ecosystem has grown dramatically. Put differently, the playing field has been leveled. Full-frame mirrorless is now finally a hyper-competitive segment even for Sony. Although I'd still give the nod to Sony for the depth and breadth of its lens ecosystem and its non-stop ambition for making its OEM lens catalog the smallest, lightest, fastest, and highest image quality lineup in the business. So, if you complain that the A75 doesn't have OpenGate, 4K 120p, no crop, 8K, anamorphic D-squeeze, raw video recording, internal or external 32-bit float audio, increased sensor resolution, or some other state-of-the-art specification, you know what? I say this with love. Stop whining. Quit speculating. Suck it up. Buy what you need instead of b***ing about it. If you really need more than what the A75 can provide, hold that thought, and get on with the business or pleasure of using it to create something good, something worthy, something you enjoy and can be proud of. If you wish that Sony would completely revamp its menu system and add shutter angle, if you really like the addition of a second USB-C port because it allows one to power the camera for long live streams or recording sessions while simultaneously connecting the camera via the other USB-C port for that stream or long-form recording, including recording to an external SSD, fair enough. I can go there. Finally, if you've already figured out that mirrorless camera technology has reached an asymptote, that is, plateaued, and concluded that differences in headline specifications among cameras are less important than small details that have larger impacts on your workflow, lens ecosystems, and your investment in what you already have, money and muscle memory, versus the ROI for replacing or upgrading it, a grounded, real-world assessment of what you truly need? Cool. Let's talk. Because flat out, I think the A75 is the proof statement for all of this, including a new 33-megapixel sensor built upon the same architecture, partially stacked, first found not in a Sony camera, but the 24-megapixel Z6 III launch 18 months ago, then found in the S1 Mark II, now evolved by Sony. Call where we are now a post-specifications obsessed era of small details that shorten the distance between intent and execution. And I, for one, am glad. Less noise, more signal, less futzing. Leaving us, in the end, with more room for taking personal accountability and think time for the substance of what we do. The thing of it is, what most interested me upon learning the details of the A75? I mean, fine, it wouldn't surprise me if I were the only one to think this way because I'm used to being a statistical outlier, is that pair of USB-C ports, for precisely the reasons I outlined above. This would make a real difference to my workflow for presentations, one-on-one real-time mentoring sessions, long-form interviews, and the occasional philosophical rant masquerading as a gear review. I wish more cameras had two USB-C ports just like the A75, especially for video use. I've asked for it for a couple of years now, and it just plain works on the A75, so kudos Sony. The second thing that interested me are the words improved thermal management. This was one of two reasons I left the Sony Fold for Lumix, and I wondered how much better it could really be without cooling. Much better. In a particularly brutal cold snap along the East Coast, I was not able to do my midsummer day outdoor thermal management torture test, but what I could do was run the A75 at 4K 24p 10-bit 420 here in the Batcave continuously, ambient temperature 68 degrees Fahrenheit, until the 240 gigabyte CF Express card filled 4 hours and 53 minutes, which is good enough for me, as I simply can't imagine a reason why I'd ever do a long-form recording at a higher bitrate or frame rate. As for midday, midsummer documentary interviews outdoors along a hazardous liquids pipeline, not so sure. I mean, I didn't stress IBIS, I didn't stress autofocus, but those days are behind me. The third thing I wondered about, and the fulcrum upon which the entire value proposition of the A75 would matter most to me were I in the market, is the other reason I left the Sony Fold for our professional video work. Whether or not Sony had fixed a back focus issue I found when doing product showcase style shots, which at the time Sony chose not to prioritize. This was in the depths of COVID when I really needed it. It has. In fact, I'd say, once again, for what we do, that the A75's autofocus is better, marginally so, than the Panasonic Lumix S1 II. Not enough to switch because the S1 II's autofocus is excellent for us, and the S1 II is a more compelling total package for our video work. But the improvement in autofocus is notable nonetheless. I'm shooting with a 51.2 wide open right now, and the focus is utterly flawless first crack out of the barrel. Really impressive. That the A75 retains the same 33 megapixel resolution of the A7 IV, while offering a full-sized HDMI port, yay, 4K 60p no crop with view priority turned on, the higher resolution 4-way rear screen of the A7R5 and its autofocus system now integrated on a single chip for greater manufacturing efficiencies, pre-capture, reduced rolling shutter, and the best dynamic range in a full-frame camera with at least 24 megapixels as measured by Bill Claff of photons to photo. All good things, all upgrades from the A7 IV. But again, nothing that gives me pause about staying with the S1 II, which from a practical perspective does all of this and more. The 3/4 stop dynamic range advantage over the S1 II at base ISO, narrowing to half a stop by ISO 400, 1/3 of a stop at ISO 800, essentially indistinguishable beyond that. Yeah. It offers bragging rights, absolutely. But once more, it is not critical for what we do it with, how we do it, and how often we do it. And not as good when I really need wide latitude as a handheld 3-shot exposure bracket burst. The incremental 9 megapixels of the A75 versus the 24 of our S1 II, not meaningful for us because it is sufficient to give us sterling 4K results. We don't need or want more for video, and we have much more compelling equipment for our personal work, street photography. Both of these are bigger deals, however, for those of us comparing the A75 to the Z6 III especially. The A75 in this case offers a full 2-stop advantage in dynamic range at base ISO, and that is dramatic, especially if you rely on a single body for videos and stills, as dynamic range outdoors on location is much harder to control than on set. What about the A75's lack of open gate? I appreciate how the Lumix S12 leverages open gate, but not for the reasons most people mention, like anamorphic D-squeeze or easier extraction of, say, 9x16 clips for social media from plain Jane 16x9 or 17x9 horizontal capture. Instead, it's Panasonic's use of OpenGate to enable cropless, electronic IS, incremental to lens IS, and in-body image stabilization without reducing field of view. I think this is very clever, even if Claudia and I still rely on a gimbal for those rare occasions where we need that kind of shot. Fact is, we don't shoot anamorphic at all. There is nothing to this point I want to say for which anamorphic lenses make the most sense, and if that day ever comes, I suspect, as might, by then, hopefully, my DP, a dedicated video camera with internal electronic variable neutral density filter would be what I'd want anyway. I don't care at all about OpenGate for 9x16 extracts. I've learned how to record myself within a 9x16 vertical frame within my usual 16x9 4K capture, and I've learned how to render it vertically as well. No big thing. While a 9x16 frame marker works beautifully on our S12 with the latest firmware update, I see it in the 27-inch monitor here just below the camera as I'm recording, and the A75 also offers a 9x16 frame marker, the A75 does not show the frame marker via HDMI out. I hope Sony updates a firmware fix for it. Contemplating OpenGate for the marginal incremental resolution it offers on the 6 to 8 square inches of a smartphone screen, for which you probably rendered in 1080p or 720p, makes no sense to me whatsoever. And this is hardly the first time I'm saying so. Then again, I'm not a camera op, DP, or editor who needs to satisfy client requests, and I do have friends who are.
Can you do it in 8K? I think our target audience would super appreciate it.
Personally, I'd care more about OpenGate for photography if the native sensor aspect ratio on any of these cameras were 5:4 rather than 3:2. I learned last summer, shooting with the medium format Hasselblad X2D, that 5:4 sensor with the same nominal horizontal field of view of a full frame camera provides additional headroom, and this really can make a substantive difference to the frame. 32-bit float audio? Great idea. Definitely useful in the field. Very cool that the S12 has it when used with their XLR adapter. Would have been nice if Sony had made it available on the A75. Even better if they'd figured out how to build in a wireless receiver. I'd like that. 2-channel. With this said, I don't use 32-bit float here in the Batcave, even though I could, because I choose instead to set my levels correctly, keep my voice at a fairly constant level, and run my audio through Auphonics in post. Great sight. Thus, no big deal as far as I'm concerned that the A75 doesn't have it. No 8K video? Please. Way too much processing and storage overhead for too little return for 99% of us 99% of the time.
I am not ready for my close-up, and you are not going to film me in 8K whatever either.
Dual CF Express card slots. Nice that the A75 has one, Type A. Nice that the S12 has one, Type B. But the hard reality is that CFE cards, A and B, both heat up much more quickly than old-school SD cards. So the fact that neither camera has two CFE cards doesn't matter to me either. 4K 120p on the A75 and Super 35 only. The S12 does 4K 96p no crop. Really nice. I use it often, and I think this is a real advantage of the S12 for what and how we do it. But most of us are usually satisfied with 4K 60p. And the A75 does that either with no crop, as I previously mentioned, or when not in field of view priority, a small 1.15x crop. We get by. I do, however, very much miss a small detail, shutter angle, that the A7 doesn't have, that the S12 does. I switch between 4K 24p and 96p all the time, so shutter angle is my default setting. One less type of mistake I'd be far more likely to make without it. I also very much miss on the A75 the ability to simultaneously display to an external monitor and the rear screen. This is another small detail which is available on the S12 that turns out to be not small at all, as I often go back and forth between them. Although you could get a Shinobi 2 and just have control of your camera right here. Good time to mention that while pretty much all smartphone companion apps have evolved dramatically in the past couple of years, neither Sony Creative Cloud and Monitor and Control apps nor Panasonic Lumix Tether, Sync, or Flow apps are as robust, as intuitive, and as easily recoverable when something goes wrong or dead ends logically as I'd like them to be. I'll wrap it up this way. I think the A7V is a solid upgrade from the A7 IV, but it is not the leap the A7 III was over the A7 II. Then again, I don't think this was Sony's ambition for it. I guess they did the math, evaluated the technology pipeline, evaluated the market and where it makes its margins, and concluded it just didn't make economic or practical sense for them to aim any higher. It likely will keep people in the Sony fold, and that is hardly a bad thing. It's a great thing for Sony. I think the A75 will be a worthy upgrade for more than a few A7 series shooters, plain Jane and A7S shooters, even in their latest iterations, but it is unlikely to generate conquest sales the way the A7 III did. The only reason for a Sony A7R series shooter to pick up an A75 would be if they'd learned just how bad the rolling shutter of those cameras can be for a couple of fairly narrow photography use cases, like riding up the FDR Drive and shooting across the river west into Long Island City or Brooklyn without a neutral density filter during the day. Wowzers. But Claudia's A7R5 and A7CR are going nowhere. The A75 might take sales that to this point would have gone to Canon or Nikon legacy DSLR shooters, maybe mirrorless Canon or Nikon APS-C shooters looking to go full frame who have yet to invest in full frame glass. In the real world, the A75 is competitive with the R6 III, Z6 III, and S1 Mark II, although I suspect those of us already in the Lumix fold are least likely to switch brands, all things considered. The A75's menus are the menus, the ergos are the ergos, and the fact of the matter is you spend enough time with the camera and you figure it out. They are surmountable by ignoring something approaching 100% of the choices it offers, and I believe the offset is Sony's lens system. I think it continues to be the most compelling lens ecosystem out there to the most people out there. In the end, you could even call the A75 a lower resolution, less expensive, but faster, better, more practical a7R5 for the rest of us, a better hybrid. But however you choose to think about it, the bigger point is this. With no change in resolution from its immediate predecessor, the A7 IV, and an emphasis instead on manufacturing efficiencies, including the single-chip integration of the previously dedicated autofocus processor with the general-purpose processor, the rare occurrence of a new-to-Sony cameras sensor architecture debuted earlier in the Nikon Z6 III and Lumix S1 II, and relatively mundane, yet very practical and impactful updates, the playing field has leveled. Making it very clear, yet again, that it's the person, not the gear, that matters most. That we should spend more time finding and honing our artistic voices, mastering whatever gear we do choose to invest in, holding ourselves accountable for that choice and what we do with it, and spend much less time and emotional energy speculating about non-critical path functionality that just doesn't matter. Just saying. This video is brought to you by Squarespace. From custom domains to beautiful websites using their easily customizable templates that you can have up and running in minutes, e-commerce, email and email marketing, SEO, analytics, and scheduling, Squarespace does it all and has done it for us for the last 10 years. If you are a small to mid-sized business in any industry, Squarespace is the place to go for all of your website needs. Hop over to www.squarespace.com/Hugh for a free trial. And if you like what you see and want to move forward, receive 10% off your first order by using the discount code Hugh at checkout. Thanks, Squarespace. If you like what you've seen here today, please give a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, join the conversation in the comment section below because this is an exceptional audience. If you'd like help with a portfolio review, gear selection, finding or honing your artistic voice, sign up for a one-on-one mentoring video call via Zoom at 3bmep.com/booking. Finally, please consider supporting our work by using the no-cost-to-you affiliate links down below, sending us coffee money via PayPal, or most especially, joining us on Patreon, links down below as well. However you choose to support us, as always, we thank you for it.